Alright, what is up folks? So for this video, I'm going to play a bit of a devil's advocate. I'm going to show you guys this school behind me. Look at this. So this is called Jilin Yuwen Zhongxue. It translates to Jilin City's Yuwen High School. So in China, the system is very similar to what you can expect from the West. You have 6 years of primary school, you have 3 years of middle school, also paid for the government. And if you want to send your kids to high school, it's another 3 years. But this time, the tuition is not covered by the government. But you guys see, things are not that simple. If it was only, that simple to raise children, if it only really costed 3 years of tuition to raise your kid until he or she is 18. By the way, I'm stopping at this school because this is considered to be the best high school in my hometown city. So Jilin City, as of 2025, is a tier 3 city. It's been upgraded. So this is a medium-sized city in China, you can say, because in China there are 5 different tiers. So, yeah, I did mention, even though your first 9 years is paid for, there's a hidden fee. I've titled this video, the $1 million baby, why having children is not worth it in 2025. Okay, I want you guys to think about it like this. It's very, very common in Asia because there's so much competition. So this is not just in China, it's also in Taiwan. It's the same thing in Singapore, and it's the same thing in South Korea, and it's the same thing in Japan. If you want to send your kids to school, if you want to have children, this is why so many people are becoming dinks. What are dinks? Dual income, no kids. So for example, right, in China there's a lot of competition, right? Going to school education is very important. There are 3,000 universities. There are currently 40 million Chinese students. Yes, 40 million. That is roughly the same as the population of Canada. So there are 40 million Chinese students studying at these universities. The competition is absolutely fierce. So if as a parent, if you're not willing to pay a lot of money to send your kids to school, someone else will. So this is the brutal reality. So if you want to send your kids to a decent primary school, right, you can send them to any just random average Joe primary school. Sure, that's going to take care of your kids, that's going to take care of their education. However, if you want to give them the best opportunity to get into a top tier middle school and then eventually into a top tier high school, eventually into a top tier university, usually you have to pay. Unless, for primary school, maybe it's not so bad, maybe you don't have to pay, but certainly starting in middle school, because unless your kid is some kind of medical marvel, some top 1% Einstein genius, right? Unless he can get score, 99%, 100%, 98% on every single test, on every single assignment, on every single exam, right? Your kid is not going to be able to get in because there's so much competition. Typically, to get into a middle school in a tier 3 city, right? Unless let's say if your kid scores somewhere in the average, right? Let's say 75 or even slightly above average, 80%, right? In primary school, for him or her to get into a decent middle school, you will need to pay 100,000 yuan. Yes, 100,000 yuan in order to make up that difference. And once again, why do so many parents why are they willing to pay this fee? Because if you're not willing to, somebody else will. There's so much competition. China has 1.4 billion people. So think about it. That's just middle school. So right now, my sister's first child. So now she's 13 years old now. She's gonna be turning 13. She's currently in grade 7, first year of 3 years of middle school. So they were lucky enough. They got into the best middle school in the city. So the one I just showed you guys in the beginning, that's a high school. So they were lucky enough because they knew someone as a close personal friend that works on the school board. So they got in for free. So yeah, either you have to be extremely smart, extremely brilliant, or you have to know someone. If you don't know someone, you need to pay 100,000 yuan or $14,000 US to get into a decent middle school. That's just middle school. Now let's keep going. All right, now let's talk about high school, right? What if you want to send your kid into the one I showed you guys at the start of this video, right? The best high school in the city. So that is going to cost you roughly, I would say, 200,000 yuan to get your kid into one of the best high schools in town, because there's so much competition, right? I don't know how many high schools that there are. It's got to be, what, 30? I would say at least 30 high schools. And this is ranked #1 for a reason, right? If you get sent to this high school, there's a very, very good chance that you will land up with a very, very decent government or white collar job, right? This can set you up for your future. This can set you up for your path to a university, and possibly if you want to get your master's, to get your PhD, this is your pathway to success, right? If you land in, let's say, out of the 30 high schools, if you land somewhere in the middle, if you land one that's 15th out of 30, then your chances are 50-50. If you get into the worst high school in the city, well, the odds aren't looking good for you. So that's what you're dealing with. So typically, unless you're a medical marvel, unless your kid's a super genius, or unless you know someone directly that's on the school board, right, that's on the school council, you know, the principal or the vice principal, they can get you into a spot. So except for those two conditions, you typically have to pay at least 200,000 yuan or $28,000 USD to get your kid into one of those high schools. So to get your kid into one of the best high schools in the city. So just you know, middle school, high school, that's, you know, 6 years, you're looking at 300,000 yuan. That is $42,000 USD. Doesn't sound like a lot of money, but remember, people in China, they're making Chinese yuan. They're not making US dollars. This is a massive, massive life-changing sum of money. And what if, right, if your kids, everything is going well, let's say either they're super, super smart, they're a medical marvel, they're a genius, and also, or if you know someone on the school board, and let's say everything went smoothly from middle school to high school, heck, even before that, primary school, you paid all the money. Now your kid has scored decently, relatively well on the Gaokao, the high test, or the university entrance exam. Let's say your kid scored 80 or 85%. Not exceptional. You want to send your kids into a top-tier university now, right? How much is that going to cost? Well, if you want a solid top-tier university in China, let's say out of 3,000 universities in China, if you want to send them into the top 300, the top 10%, right? That is going to cost you minimum 300,000 yuan or $42,000 USD. Remember, middle school, high school, university. So that is 600,000 yuan. That is almost $100,000 USD. Why does it cost so much? Because, you know, education in the Asian culture, right, it's being revered, it's being worshipped, it's holy, right? It's going to school is so important. Everybody wants to get into a good university. Everybody wants good grades, right? Unless you're the top 1 or 2% of students, unless you can consistently score, you know, 100%, 99%, 98%, then yes, you can get a scholarship, you can get it in for free. But for most people, even people who score, you know, let's say decently, right, 90% or 85%, your parents have to spend an insane amount of money, almost $100,000 just to get them into a top-tier university. And once again, right, and the fees vary. Once your child getting into university is the same thing, right? China only pays for primary school 6 years and 3 years of middle school. The tuition when your kids goes to school, especially, you know, if the area where you live, there's not a decent university, you have to send them into a different city or sometimes a different province, right? You have to pay for their travel fees, right? You have to pay for their books, you have to pay for their housing, you have to pay for their clothes, and then you have to pay for their laundry, you have to pay for their food, everything combined. Just imagine that, 4 more years of university. This is on top of, you know, just spending almost 100 grand on just getting your kids accepted into these schools. And this is the fierce competition, and many people in the West might not know about. By the way, this is not due to corruption by China. By the way, Taiwan also does this, Singapore also does this, Japan also does this, South Korea also does this. This is a part, you know, part of the Asian culture because education is so revered. There's so much competition. The university can only take in so many people. The best high school in town can only take in so many people. So, you know, unless you're willing to pay the money, you won't be able to get in. So this is what you're dealing with. I think a lot of people in the West, they don't realize what's happening. And this is part of the contributing factor to, you know, the East Asia's population collapse. I did mention, you know, South Korea now has the lowest birth rate in the world at just 0.68 children per woman. You know, a lot of people are not talking about these fees. That is absolutely outrageous because during my mom's, my dad's, and my uncles and aunts' generation, none of these fees existed. My mom, when she wanted to go back to school, she went back to school for free. Why has so much changed? Well, you see, times have changed, right? During my dad, my mom, my uncle, my aunt's era, that was during a time when most of China was living under extreme poverty. Very few people had the skills. Very few people had any kind of education. So China was, you know, absolutely desperate when China finally opened up during Comrade Deng Xiaoping's economic reform and opening up of China. China was desperate for university students. So anybody that wanted to come back to school could come back to school for free. And you know, way back then, China had virtually no doctors. China had virtually no civil servants. China had virtually no lawyers. China had virtually no engineers. So China was absolutely desperate for these skilled workers. It's basically it's a price elasticity. This is a supply demand issue, right? And you know, let's say, you know, if the country is in need of a million doctors, and if you only have 100,000 people that's enrolled in medical school, And obviously these people, they're going to become diamonds. They're going to be so valuable because everybody is going to want them, right? Because there's a massive shortage for doctors and nurses. But now if you look at the state of China in 2025, right, everybody's graduating from university. Everybody has a master's degree. It's nothing. Even now they're pumping out PhDs like it's nothing. So so much has changed, right? There's just way too many people graduating from universities, and the demand just simply isn't there anymore, because many people from my mom's generation, they're still working, and the country can only hire so many civil servants. There can only be a limited number of high-paying jobs. There can only be a limited number of engineers. There can only be a limited number of CEOs. So, and that's just the brutal reality. The good-paying jobs that used to be there have all been filled by the previous generation, and they were very lucky, the previous generation, because almost everybody was uneducated. So education, they all got it for free. But now there's so much competition, you have to pay for everything. And there's another aspect you guys must consider, right? This is if you choose to have a son in China. I think the Chinese parents who were obsessed with having a son, you're absolutely insane. It's 100 times better to have a daughter. I'm going to bring the topic of dowry, right? Now, so out of all that stuff I've covered up to university, all the fees you have to pay. By the way, these are the fees they have all popped up in the last 20 or 30 years. They did not used to exist, right? You never ever had to pay to get your son or your daughter into middle school or high school or university, but now there's too much competition, so now almost everybody has to pay. So let's talk about if you're one of the lucky ones, if you got into a solid top-tier university, right? Once again, unless you graduate from university, the top 1 or top 2% from your class, you're this Einstein genius, this medical marvel, you have a 150 IQ, then yes, right up on graduation, you have a job with an insane salary that's lined up for you. But I'm talking about, the top 1 or the top 2% of university graduates. For the vast majority of them, yes, many of them, they can't find a job because there are way too many people graduating from universities. Once again, you got 40 million Chinese students that's currently enrolled in Chinese universities. There's so much competition. It's unbelievable. So for the really smart, really lucky ones, you can find a really good paying job. But for the next, let's say if you're top 10, top 20, possibly top 30 or top 40%, if you want a decent job, let's say if you want to become a 公务员 or a civil servant, this is a white collar government job. This is a job that's very much revered, and many young people are desperate to look for this kind of job because it comes with a very good pension, it comes with very good benefits, it comes with universal health care, and you only have to work 40 hours a week versus the typical 996 to 72-hour work week, which is extremely demanding both physically and mentally. So getting into one of those jobs, once again, your parents, they have to pay again to get in, because everybody wants that white collar government job, right? Nobody wants to go work at McDonald's and work 72 hours a week, right? Nobody wants to end up being a street sweeper and work 72 hours a week and being paid the minimum wage. So if you want to, let's say, your son to become a civil servant, or if you want your daughter to, let's say, work in the railway industry, which also pays extremely well, or in some cases if they are born with a very attractive facial features, they can become a flight attendant. Generally, to set up your son or daughter into one of these employment areas, you have to pay anywhere between 100,000 to 300,000 yuan. Once again, there's a big variation because depending on where you live, right? Tier 1 cities are very expensive. If you live in Beijing or Shanghai or Chongqing, you probably have to pay 300,000 yuan just to fund your son or daughter a job. So once again, 300,000 yuan, that is $42,000 USD. That is a massive sum of money, right, for the people making the average income in China. I did mention in previous videos that in a tier 3 city in China, so I mean a tier 3 city, the average income is roughly, I would say, 6,000 yuan a month. 6,000 yuan, that is $830 US. Imagine having to pay upwards of 300,000 yuan for your son or your daughter after they have graduated university just to get them into the field that they wanted to work in. And why is it so expensive? Too much competition. 40 million Chinese people enrolled in universities. Just imagine the fierce competition, because back in my parents' generation, there wasn't this many competition, right? Nobody was going to university, nobody had skills, so it was very easy to come back to school for free. It was very easy to find a job. My mom, my dad, my uncles, my aunts, they never ever had to search for a job. The job was given to them, the education was given to them for free. But now the next generation, all the pressures on them, and if you want to raise the next generation, right, it makes sense, right, why so many millennials and Gen Zs are becoming dinks. They don't want to have children, because primary school, it's okay, right? But for middle school, you have to pay for your kids to get in. For high school, you have to pay for your kids to get in. For university, you have to pay for your kids to get in, and for employment, you have to pay for your kids to get in. Once again, this is not just a China problem. It's the same thing in Taiwan. I've been to Taiwan as well. It's the same thing in South Korea. It's the same thing in Japan. And this is what's leading to the demographic suicide, because so many people are realizing that unless they can make an insane amount of money, they won't be able to make it. And once again, to add on to the point, if you want to have a son, right? If you want your son to get married, it's expected that the son must pay his bride the dowry, which is roughly minimum 200,000 yuan. So that is $28,000 USD. So and typically most young men, as a 25-year-old, where are you going to find that money? So typically the parents have to come up with the dowry in order for them son to get married. And on top of that, if you want your son to get married, typically the bride, Chinese bride, expects a minimum 100 square meters or 1,070 square feet bedroom. You don't have to own it outright, but at least you have to come up with the down payment. But the bride is not going to help the husband with the down payment. The man has to pay for everything. So basically you're looking at one of these buildings, right? So these are decent upscale riverfront apartment buildings. You can see everywhere. As you guys can see, this is the Songhua River behind me. So the Chinese woman, right, the young Chinese woman, the millennials and Gen Z, they expect one of these apartments, 3 bedrooms, 1 bathroom, minimum 100 square meters or 1,076 square feet. On top of that, they expect the man to spend 3 months of their salary on the wedding ring. On top of that, they expect a dowry minimum of 200,000 yuan. So yeah, it is getting absolutely insane. This is why so many Chinese men, they're going, men going their own way, MGTOW. And so many young couples, the lucky ones, the Chinese guys who can find a girlfriend, they're just saying that either we just stay as boyfriends and girlfriends, we don't get married because I can't afford to pay you the dowry. And I can rent an apartment, but unfortunately I can't afford to purchase an apartment. And raising children, paying for middle school, paying for high school, paying for their university, and paying for them just to get a decent job to work as a civil servant. And also they mentioned in my video on iPad baby, so many kids are getting sick constantly. Unless you have a good solid white collar job that you can get universal health care for your family, but if you don't have one of those jobs, you had to pay for everything, every single hospital visit, every single medication. So yeah, I'm sorry to say, but being a bit of a devil's advocate in this video, but having children in 2025 is absolutely not worth it. It has gotten so expensive. Is there a solution to this? It's hard to say, not in the near future. And if you're one of those people, if you're a man going your own way, or if you're a couple, you're living together, you're happy, you're married, you decide to not have children, I think there's absolutely nothing wrong with that. By the way, I'm sorry about the background noises for this video. I wanted to go outside and get some fresh air, and I will follow up on this topic. I want to wish everybody a Merry Christmas and a Happy New Year's. I will see you guys next video. By the way, so on January 1st, a very, very special video will be uploaded. It will be uploaded on special times. This is a holiday, so I will upload that video on noon Eastern Standard Time on January 1st of 2025. Thank you guys so much.